Hello everyone, hope you're well. We're going to carry on working on language paper 1 question 5, the creative writing question, and we're going to look at structure. Structure in your response is a really easy way of increasing your marks. We're still making sure that clarity is our number one, but structure might be one of the things that we're consciously thinking about that we wouldn't necessarily without kind of being prompted to do so. So these are the things that we've been looking at and we'll continue to look at in the next few lessons. We're looking at vocab, structure, language features, sentences and punctuation. Today we're going to focus just on that structure. Not going to be getting you to do any writing today. It's going to be more about thinking about structure and planning about structure. Okay, so like I said earlier, this is a thing to consciously be thinking about. This is often seen as being the most impactful thing you could do before you start doing creative writing. It's a thing that we tend to see in those higher candidates. As candidates getting those higher marks tend to be the ones who have consciously thought about how they're structuring their writing. So examiners are looking for it, and we just want to provide what it is that they're looking for into those higher levels so that we're getting the best grade possible. Okay, you might have seen this before, but here are some of the structural choices that we might make. These are ones that examiners are aware of and are looking for. So we want to be doing what the examiner expects us to do because it makes it easier for them to mark our work. So things that they might be expecting us to do are a cyclical structure. So the idea of that cycle, we start in a certain place and end at exactly the same place. Might be some slight tweaks, but it's about starting and ending in the same place. So we might be outside of a building, and then we go into the building, have a wander around, and then we end it back outside the building. That's a cyclical structure. Using a repeated motif. This isn't about repeating a word. This is about an idea being repeated all the way through, or a symbol being repeated all the way through. So you might have the symbol of a bird that features regularly throughout that response, and that's a repeated choice and a structural feature that we would be looking for. Using a repeated phrase, this works really effectively, particularly if you can use that phrase as your first sentence and your final sentence, and maybe once or twice in between, but it could just be literally a sentence that you use regularly throughout the response. Using time, so that there's a countdown. You could do 3 minutes to go, 10 seconds to go, or literally in terms of time, like that one, 12:01, 12:23, 12:36, and so on. This is one that's really useful if you find writing creatively is something that you're not naturally fond of, and this works really, really well if you pick the image. So it's a drop, as in you drop straight into the middle of the story. You shift, so you'll do like a flashback probably, or maybe a flash forward. Zoom in onto something small in the picture, and then leave. So you'll leave that particular place and go somewhere else, and that would be your whole response just on those particular sections. Okay guys, so here's a link to a YouTube video which focuses just on that particular structural choice that I was talking about, just so the drop, shift, zoom, leave way of structuring your response. She talks a little bit aimlessly for the first couple of minutes, so feel free to whiz through that, but then she explains this is a structural choice really, really clearly, really effectively with examples. So if that's one that you're thinking of using or just a little bit uncertain about, that video will be really, really helpful for you. Okay, so this is an example of a question 5 from a few years ago. We've got the choice of 2, as we tend to expect, that image as we've always had. So the first question was writing a description inspired by that image, and the second task was the narrative one, where you write the opening of a story that features the following lines. So today was going to be a terrible day, one of those days it was best to stay in bed because everything's going to turn out bad. So when we move on to the structural task on the next slide, I want you to pick which one of these 2 tasks would you be likely to focus on if this were your exam. So would you want to do the description with that house and that storm and the sea, or would you want to do a bit of a story about a bad day? So what I want you to do is I want you to think about that task, and when I finish nattering on, you might want to pause it and go back and have a look at that image or have a look at that narrative task. And all I want you to do is I want you to think, right, if I approached that task, what structural choices could I make? So you might pick the image, and then I'd want you to go through the 5 different structural features that we've got in that blue box and plan how you could take that image and use a cyclical structure, and then that image how you could use a repeated motif, and that image and how you could use a repeated phrase, and so on and so forth. So you're going to pick a task, and then you're going to try and just note down how would I structure that piece of writing in those ways, so the ways in the blue box. So you should have 5 different possible structures, and then when you've done that, I just want you to think, which one of those structural choices do you think works best? You're not going to use all of them. You're absolutely not going to be cramming every single possible structural thing in. You might use 1, you might possibly use 2, but we're not going to be using all 5. So which ones do you think you would use if that was your exam question? Which of those structural features do you think would work best? No need to submit this to me. I'm always interested if you want to. I'm always happy to have a look at what you're doing. But for today, it's just about thinking about structure. In a few lessons time, we'll be doing a piece of extended writing, and this will be particularly relevant there.